In the middle of the city, beyond fences and fumes, a small boy named Tommy stays locked in his room. He wears a cape and fights for mankind in the safety of his room, with pictures in his mind. His parents say, "Tommy, won't you play outside with the neighborhood children? Take your bike for a ride." But Tommy knew better. There was danger outside. His neighbor Alex had punched him, and Tommy had cried. His parents were worried that Tommy was weak, and Tommy started thinking he was some kind of freak. So Tommy's parents sent Tommy away for a week in the mountains of outside play. Tommy rubbed sunscreen on the freckles on his nose, which made him feel like the lowest of lows. And when the bus arrived at camp, Tommy stood in disbelief. Beauty lived inside every rock, tree, and leaf. Tommy found a bunk, and then found a new friend who used his imagination. His name was Ken. He also met a girl whose name was Kitty. She told Tommy that his freckles were pretty. Later that day, Tommy went on a hike with his cabin mates and his counselor, Mike. Mike showed the boys many flowers and trees. Then he grabbed a sunflower and got down on his knees. Mike held up the flower and asked the boys if they knew who made the flowers grow and the beautiful view. One of the boys said God made it so. "I don't see him," said another. "So how do you know?" "It was Allah." "No, Krishna," the kids started to yell. Then Mike stood up. He had something to tell. The flower comes from the seed, and the seed comes from the source, and source has many names, Allah or Krishna and Jesus, of course. But they're all the same thing, the source of it all, the flower, the planet, the big and the small. Then he drew on the flower with a marker colored red. He moved the leaves from the bottom to the top of its head. "Now that looks much better," Mike said, looking glad, but the boys in the cabin thought the flower looked sad. "It was better before," the boys all cried, "before you changed it." And then Mike sighed. "You're right, of course. It was born just right. That's how Source makes things." And his eyes smiled bright. "And all of you came from the same source. And you're perfect, too. A beautiful force." That night in his bunk, as his flashlight grew dim and he thought of his friend who played just like him, he thought of Kitty and how he loved this place and how she loved the freckles that covered his face. Then he thought of the flower, perfect in every way, and how he was like it, and that's how it would stay. Then Tommy closed his eyes. He was grateful, you see, to be just as he was, as perfect as can be.